He showed up every morning. Same bench, same bag of birdseed. In the quiet dawn of Central Park, before the city truly woke, he was a silent fixture, a man communing with pigeons and sparrows. His name was Arthur, though no one knew it at the time. To the few early joggers and dog walkers who saw him, he was just the Birdman. He moved with a gentle, practiced rhythm, a scoop of seeds into his weathered palm, a soft call that was more of a whisper, and then the flutter of wings. They knew him, these birds. They'd land on his shoulders, his arms, even the brim of his worn tweed hat, trusting him completely. It was a small, peaceful kingdom he ruled over for an hour each day. But someone did notice. Her name was Clara, a young photographer who lived in an apartment overlooking this very corner of the park. Her lens was usually pointed at the grand cityscapes, the dramatic sunsets over the Hudson. But one morning, drawn by the unusual stillness of the scene, she pointed her camera down towards the man on the bench. What she saw wasn't just a man feeding birds. It was a portrait of patience, of a quiet, unassuming kindness. The way a tiny finch would peck seeds directly from his fingertip, the way he'd murmur to them as if sharing secrets. It was beautiful. So she started documenting it. Every morning, she'd be at her window, capturing these fleeting moments of connection. Her collection of photos grew. Arthur in the crisp autumn air, surrounded by a whirlwind of golden leaves and pigeons. Arthur in the stark white of winter, a dark coat against the snow, the birds his only companions. Arthur in the vibrant bloom of spring, almost lost among the blossoms. A modern-day St. Francis. Clara felt a growing curiosity. Who was this man? What was his story? She was a storyteller with her camera, but this story felt incomplete. She needed to know more. So one day, she packed her camera, took a deep breath, and walked down into the park. Approaching him felt like intruding on a sacred ritual. He looked up as her shadow fell over him. His eyes, framed by wrinkles, were surprisingly clear and gentle. He didn't seem startled, just mildly curious. "Good morning," Clara said, her voice a little shaky. "Hi. I hope I'm not disturbing you." He offered a small, kind smile. "They don't seem to mind. And neither do I, please." He gestured to the empty space on the bench. She sat, placing her camera bag beside her. "My name is Clara. I'm a photographer. I live just over there." She pointed towards her building. "I've been watching you for a while, taking photos." She expected him to be wary, maybe even annoyed. Instead, he just nodded. "Arthur," he said simply. "It's nice to meet you, Clara." "So, I'm your subject." "You and your friends," she replied, smiling, feeling more at ease. It's a beautiful thing you do, every single day." Arthur looked out at the birds flocking around his feet. "It's not much," he said, "but it's something. They're reliable, you know? They don't care what you did yesterday or what you'll do tomorrow. They just care that you're here now, with a little kindness to share." That was the beginning of their friendship. Clara started joining Arthur on his bench most mornings. She learned that he was a retired librarian, a widower whose wife, Eleanor, had also loved the park. Coming here was his way of staying connected to her, to the simple joys they once shared. He told her about the birds, giving them names and personalities. There was General, a big, bossy pigeon with a funny limp. Pip, a tiny, brave sparrow who was always the first to land on his hand. And Shadow, a sleek, dark starling that kept a watchful distance. Clara, in turn, shared her world with him. She showed him her photos, the ones she'd taken of him. Seeing himself through her eyes was a strange experience for Arthur. He saw not just an old man on a bench, but a figure of peace and consistency in a world that was constantly changing. "You make me look important," he chuckled, looking at a photo of himself silhouetted against the rising sun. "You are important, Arthur," Clara said softly. "To them," she nodded at the birds. "And, well, you've become important to me, too." Inspired by their conversations, Clara decided to put together an exhibition. She called it The Birdman of Central Park. It wasn't just about the photos. It was about Arthur's story. The story of how small, consistent acts of kindness can create a world of beauty and meaning. The opening night was abuzz with people. The gallery walls were covered with large prints of Arthur and his flock. In the photo, the deep connection was palpable. Visitors were moved, whispering about the simplicity and power of the images. Arthur was there, of course, looking a bit overwhelmed in a suit he hadn't worn in years. He stood in front of a portrait of himself, his face lit with a gentle smile as Pip ate from his hand. He looked at Clara, his eyes glistening. "Elena would have loved this," he whispered. The exhibition was a huge success. It was featured in city magazines and blogs. People started seeking out the Birdman's bench. They wouldn't disturb him, but they'd watch from a respectful distance, sometimes leaving a small bag of birdseed for him. He had gone from an anonymous fixture to a quiet local legend, but the real change wasn't the fame. It was the human connection. People started talking to Arthur, sharing their own stories of loss and simple joys. The bench was no longer just his. It became a meeting point, a small island of community in the vast ocean of the city. Clara continued her morning ritual, but now she often left her camera at home. She'd just sit with Arthur, enjoying the silence, the flutter of wings, and the company of a dear friend. She had started out wanting to capture a story, but in the end, she'd become a part of it. The story of Arthur, the man who fed the same birds, is a reminder. It's a reminder that you don't need grand gestures to make a difference. Sometimes, all it takes is showing up every day with a little kindness in your hand, and eventually, someone will notice. Not just the birds, but the people, too. And in noticing, they might just find a piece of the kindness they were looking for themselves. Thanks for watching. If this story touched you, consider sharing it. And don't forget to follow 4 more stories that find the extraordinary in the ordinary. See you next time.